has brought a series of slides with him that he has taken from the Soviet Union, and I think this is a good time to take a look at the slides.
Yes.
Now, the viewers will be able to see these slides as we talk about them.
Yes, this is a collection of slides which are, some of them are snapshots from my family album, some of them are documents which I smuggled from the Soviet embassy, and some are reproductions from local mass media. I usually show them to establish my credibility as a defector. This is a picture of my native town, Mytishi, about 20 miles north from Moscow. Characteristically, there is a statue of Comrade Lenin in the central square. This is myself at the age of 7, again, characteristically, under the statue of Comrade Stalin, extending his friendly hand to peoples of the world. At that age, of course, I was still idealistically minded young communist, and I still believe that sooner or later things will go for better. But I realized that the system stinks, that something is fishy, and that ideology is fake. And the propaganda about advanced Soviet agriculture simply didn't meet the criteria of reality. If they talk about abundance of food and there is none in the stores, there must be something wrong. My father was, he is on the left here, my father was officer of the General Staff of the Soviet Army. He was inspector of land forces, Soviet troops stationed in countries like Mongolia, Cuba, East European countries. Were he alive today, most likely he would be inspecting Soviet troops in Nicaragua, Angola, and many other parts of the world. Fortunately, he died, and he didn't see the disgrace, because deep inside he was a Russian patriot. He didn't like the idea of expanding Soviet military might, especially in the areas where we were not welcomed at all. Unlike many other military officers, he was reporting directly to the Minister of Defense, bypassing KGB and diplomatic service. In other words, he was a trusted military professional. And my impression that this type of people are much less hawkish and adventuristic than party bureaucrats in Kremlin. When American mass media describes Soviet military as potentially dangerous counterpart for Pentagon, I simply laugh, because I know better. I know that the most dangerous part of the Soviet power structures are not military at all. Most likely, if they come to power in my country, they'll be more sensible negotiators for nuclear disarmament and withdrawal of the Soviet troops from many parts of the world.
But if someone from the party structure or the KGB structure were to give the orders for military intervention,
they have to obey,
they
yes,
would follow,
because they are professional military. But they, you see, the triangle of power and hate in USSR is the party at the top, the party elite, the oligarchy of the party, then the military and the KGB at the bottom. They hate each other, and the most hated triangle, the most hated corner of the triangle is the Communist Party bureaucrats. They are the most adventuristic, senile megalomaniacs. They can start war, I wouldn't be surprised. Not the military. They know what war is. Yes. At least my father did. This is the picture taken at the entrance of my Institute of Oriental Languages. It's a part of Moscow State University. I graduated in 1963, and now,
excuse me, which one were you on?
I am on the right.
You're on the right.
And on the left is my my schoolmate Vadim Smirnov, who later was an apparatchik in the Central Committee of the Soviet Union Communist Party.
What is an apparatchik?
It's a functionary, something like civil service in British Empire. Someone who is never fired from the service. He stays there internally. He may not be promoted too high, but he's a dependable bureaucrat who will stay forever. I studied not only languages, but also history, literature, even music. I'm on this picture, I'm trying to learn how to play Indian musical instrument. I even tried to look like an Indian when I was second-year student.
Not bad, right?
Yes, actually it was strongly encouraged by the instructors in my school, because the graduates of my school were later on employed as diplomats, foreign journalists, or spies. As every Soviet student, I was, quote-unquote, volunteering for harvesting grain in Kazakhstan. This is a biggest agricultural blunder of the Soviet government. But I didn't have much choice, of course, because the communist motto borrowed from the Bible says, "Those who do not work shall not eat." And you can see me eating, therefore I was working, and you can see how happy I was about it. I went through a very extensive physical and military training, including the military games in areas, suburban areas of Moscow. And here, for example, we are on a tour in Arkhangelsk area. And by the end of my training in school, I was recruited by the KGB. This picture was taken on that day, and you can see again how happy it feels to be recruited by the KGB.
Our conversation with Yuri Alexandrovich Bezmenov, who is a defector from the Soviet Union, a former propaganda agent for Novosti and the KGB, will continue after this message.
As every student in USSR, I went through very extensive physical and military training and civil defense training too. Unlike in the United States, where civil defense is virtually non-existent, zero. In USSR, every student, whatever his major subject, has to go through very extensive 4-year military and civil defense training. You can see me here with a group of students during one of the war games near Moscow. The main idea, of course, is to prepare a huge reserve army of the USSR. Each student has to graduate as a junior lieutenant. In my case, it was administrative and military intelligence service. My first assignment was to India as a translator with the Soviet Economical Aid Group, building refinery complexes in Bihar state and Gujarat state. At that time, I was still naively, idealistically believing that what I was doing contributes to the understanding and cooperation between the nations. It took me quite a number of years to realize that what we were bringing to India was a new type of colonialism, 1,000 times more oppressive and exploitative than any colonialism or imperialism in history of mankind. But at that time, I was still hoping that, well, maybe it's not that bad, could be worse, and things may go for better. And I even tried to implement the beautiful Marxist motto, "Proletarians of all the countries unite." I tried to unite with a nice Indian girl, and I was fascinated by Indian culture, by the family life in this country. But obviously, Communist Party had different plans for my genes, so I had to marry this beautiful Russian girl. In the span of my career, I married 3 times. Most of these marriages were marriages of convenience, on advice from the Department of Personnel. This is normal practice in USSR. When a Soviet citizen is assigned to a foreign job, he has to be married, either to keep family in USSR as hostages, or, if it's a convenience marriage like mine, so that the husband and wife are virtually informers on each other to prevent defection or contamination by decadent imperialist or capitalist ideas. In my case, I hated that girl so much that the moment I landed in Moscow, we were divorced, and I married later, second time. By the end of my first assignment in India, I was promoted to the position of public relation officer. You can see me here translating a speech by a Soviet boss.
And you're on the right.
I'm on the right here, yes. And the occasion was commissioning of the refinery complex in Bihar, Barauni. Back in Moscow, I was immediately recruited by Novosti Press Agency, which is a propaganda and ideological subversion front for the KGB. 75% of the members of the Novosti are commissioned officers of the KGB. The other 25 are, like myself, co-opted agents who are assigned to specific operations. In this particular case, you can see me talking to students of Lumumba Friendship University in Moscow. This is a huge school under the direct control of the KGB and Central Committee, where future leaders of the so-called national liberation movements are being educated and selected carefully. And some of them have absolutely, this, for example, is a group of students from Lumumba. They don't look like students at all. They look more like military, and that's exactly what they were. They were dispatched back to their countries to be leaders of the so-called national liberation movements, or to be translated into normal human language, leaders of international terrorist groups. Another area of activity when I was working for the Novosti was to accompany groups of so-called progressive intellectuals, writers, journalists, publishers, teachers, professors of colleges. You can see me here in Kremlin. I'm second on the left, with a group of Pakistani and Indian intellectuals. Most of them pretended they don't understand that we are actually working on behalf of the Soviet government and the KGB. They pretended that they are actually being guests, VIP intellectuals, that they are treated according to their merits and their intellectual abilities. For us, they were just a bunch of political prostitutes to be taken advantage for various propaganda operations. Therefore, you can see perfectly well the senior colleague of mine on the left doesn't really have that much respect on his face, and myself with a very skeptical smile, typical KGB sarcastic smile, anticipating another victim of ideological brainwashing. This is how a typical conference in Novosti headquarters in Moscow looked like. Sitting in the middle is Boris Burkov, the then director of Novosti press agency, high-ranking party bureaucrat in the Department of Propaganda. I am standing next to a famous Indian poet, Sumitranandan Pant. He was famous because he was an author. He was the author of a famous poem titled Rhapsody to Lenin. That's why he was invited to USSR, and everything was paid by the Soviet government. Pay special attention to number of bottles on the table. This is one of the ways to kill the awareness or curiosity of foreign journalists. One of my functions was to keep foreign guests permanently intoxicated the moment they land at Moscow airport. I had to take them to the VIP lounge and toast to friendship and understanding between the nations of the world. Glass of vodka, then a second glass of vodka. And in no time, my guests would be feeling very happy. They would see everything in kind of pink, nice color. And that's the way I had to keep them permanently for the next 15 or 20 days. At a certain point in time, I had to withdraw alcohol from them so that some of them, who are the most recruitable, would feel a little bit shaky, guilty, trying to remember what they were talking last night. That's the time to approach them with all kind of nonsense, such as joint communique or statement for Soviet propaganda. That's the time they are the most flexible. And of course, what they didn't understand, they didn't realize or pretended not to realize, that myself, who was drinking together with them, was not drinking at all. I had ways to get rid of alcohol through various techniques, including special pills which were given to me by my colleagues. But they were taking it seriously. In other words, they would consume quite large volumes of alcohol and feel quite uneasy next morning.